Today we are joined by an absolute wonderful human being. And so I am joined by Cicely Freya. And Cicely, I know I always get this wrong, but the mother of Dominic Williams, defensive lineman, transferred this year from TCU to Oklahoma. So Cicely, how are you?
I'm good. Enjoying Oklahoma, trying to get used to the weather. But other than that, I'm good.
Good. And you've been out at the practice fields, and I know that's pretty hot too. So, we got a little bit of a cool front moving in, so it'll be like instead of like punishing hot, it'll just be hot,
Oh, so it just won't be 114, just 100.
hot. Yeah, exactly. Maybe in the mid 90s, but I am no weatherman. So let's hop into this one. So, one of the first questions I always ask people and the parents during these interviews are about the beginning, because when you put your kid in athletics, you go out there and all of a sudden you see Hercules, right? You see an
Yeah.
athlete, and that's going to go NFL and be a Hall of Famer. When was it with Dominic that early in his childhood that you were like, I think that we got a little something here in an athlete.
Honestly, to be honest with you, Dom was always bigger than everybody else, but I
Yeah.
really didn't, I still haven't it still hasn't hit me what kind of athlete he is. Like, I'm still looking at people when he makes plays, like, did he mess that up? So um, I want to say, though, maybe fifth grade, fourth grade-ish, around that age, it was like, okay, he likes football. Um, but it was really just his size that everybody would tell me, oh, you have a football player on your hands. And it didn't hit me until, like I said, I'm still wrapping my head around it. So
Yeah.
initially, the football became Dom's thing because we were actually driving around Southern California trying to find his older brother a team to play
Hmm.
for. And we pulled over and talked to a coach, and Dom was in the car. And it was me and the older brother, Devin, talking to the coach. And then Dom got out of the car, and it was like this big, giant 4-year-old. The coach was like, "Who is that?" I said, "Oh, that's the little brother." And he said, "Well, how old is he?" I said, "4." He said, "Oh, yeah, he's playing for us." So football really wasn't supposed to be Dom's niche, but it slowly became.
That's awesome. Now, as a mother, I
Mhm.
mean, I know, like my wife, we have currently a 6-year-old. So, like,
Uh,
we talk about football, and she's like, I don't know if I want him in the middle of the football, just because it's a rough sport. So, as a
yes.
mom, that nurturing nature kind of takes over. Did Dom's size and just some of the stuff that you were hearing from other people, did that kind of like relax that worry for you?
No, it made it worse. No, he's a freight train, and the harder the freight train is running, the harder the crash is. So, my nerves are still bad. At the end of the day, though, seeing his happiness, and I know it's a dangerous sport or whatever, but
Yeah,
at the end of the day, not many people get to do what they love and make a
yeah.
career out of it, or even get through college with it. So the fact that he's doing what he really worked hard to do, I mean, it outweighs the negative.
Definitely, definitely. So, you go through fifth grade, he starts getting, that here we go with football. What were
Mhm.
some of the first years like watching him compete? I mean, was he just, I mean, I've seen him at TCU, so I mean, like, I can't, begin to think like what it was like in fifth grade, but were you seeing him just toss folks left and right? And
Oh
how
yeah.
what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there were people, I'm like, "Oh my god, this boy is gonna have me fighting people's parents." Like, but, it's football, so they knew that what their kids were signing up for, but yeah, definitely would just toss people around. He actually started as a running back, so he was making, like, ridiculous amount of touchdowns during games, and, I was okay with him running the ball, but then when I noticed, "Oh, they're moving him to the line, what are we doing?" And people were like, "No, technically that's probably the position he's built for." So it took a while for me to get used to him helmet to helmeting all the time. But as he got better at it, we started going to different trainers who would kind of reassure me, no, mom, we're teaching him how to hit correct. Like we're trying to avoid injuries. So I'm still getting used to it, but it's getting easier.
So when was the first like refrigerator Perry comparison thrown out with him running a running back? Did you ever hear that when he was
Oh, all the
playing running
time.
back?
Yeah, all the time. They're like, "Oh, you have a refrigerator on your hands." Like, yeah, apparently. So, he Dom just had these. His legs were huge, so they're like either
Yeah,
he's gonna play football, or he has to do something where he can make some use of those giant legs. So I knew that he was gonna be something. I just didn't realize it was going to be to this extent.
that's terrific. That's terrific.
Yeah.
So you see him move over to the defensive line, and that's a position where his whole goal is to either, I mean, just absolutely swallow up the running back or punish the quarterback. Does that?
Yes.
I don't think that fits his character. From what I've seen, he doesn't seem like a super aggressive guy. So like, am I right in saying that?
Oh yeah, Dom. It bothers me sometimes because I'll hear him or I'll see on the field. Like I'm like, oh, he looks really angry, but then off the field, he's a big giant teddy bear for real. So I guess it's a good balance for him because he can go on the field and get his frustrations out, and then he's that mild mannered person off the field most of the time.
So mild mannered. We had a little bit of a hiccup there, so hopefully I'll fit
Oh
that in editing. But that's all right. Mild mannered, off the field, big teddy bear. I mean, absolutely love that. So high school years, we get towards high school years, you see the competition, you see parents, being a little bit more serious with things. When in high school were you like, I mean, nah, I've always known he's good, but now like
hmm
now we might have something else here.
So his freshman year, he played for a school that was kind of like a local football school. Sophomore year, that school got into some trouble. So it was time to start looking around for other schools. Um, and it hit me when schools like hours away were trying to get my son. And I'm like, what do you mean you want him to drive 2 hours to come to high school? So it hit me then when people started reaching out to me like, "Hey, we're interested." And I'm just used to, wasn't raised in football. So I didn't know that people, travel to go to high school. I'm used to going to the local high school. So when he had to transfer and he wound up, they came to pick him up like at 4:30 in the morning every day, and he wouldn't get home till like 7:38 at night. And so that's when it hit me like, these people want your son that bad where they're figuring out ways to get him to school um, hours away, So that's when it was like, okay, now we're in the elite athlete type stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
it's he is elite. So I mean, that was a transition. So obviously, the next transition would be all right. Now colleges are going to start calling.
yeah.
When did the recruiting start process start? Like when was that first college like reach out and you're like, oh, okay, well, there's another layer here.
Yeah, yeah. So like his sophomore year, I want to say maybe it was the summer of his sophomore year. I think it was Nevada was his first offer. And it was his recruitment, believe it or not, was kind of slow in the beginning. People were telling me like, okay, this is going to get crazy, and their phone's going to ring off the hook, and that didn't really happen right away. So um, it was just kind of like trust the process. I never really got overwhelmed up until the transfer portal thing. The initial recruitment process was actually not bad. We only really went one visit. We took one visit to Cal, and he was sold. So we really didn't jump around we didn't even take all 5 official visits initially. And I liked that. I mean, I saw other people going through the visits and getting tired out, and I was like, oh no, he's going to
Yeah,
Cal. We're fine.
that's it. We're
I had
good. We got this. We're
Yeah,
done.
we're good. We're staying a 45-minute plane ride, and that's it. So I was fine. And none of I had coaches telling me, oh, it's going to get overwhelming. You're going to have to take his phone. That really didn't happen until the transfer portal kicked in. And then I got to see, I was like, oh, this must be what everybody was talking about 2 years ago when he was a freshman. So,
So you go from, I mean, you go from that, and then TCU, next. So
yeah.
you mentioned, with the huge transfer, just 2 hours away. How did you handle that? Because Fort Worth, few more hours away than Cal.
No, just a few. I was a wreck. I cried. I prayed. I was like, God, if this is really what's supposed to happen, just, keep him safe. We are strictly like California people. I mean, I've traveled, but to actually say, I have a kid that lives out of state, that I couldn't wrap my head around that. It's taking a while. Um, but now, Oklahoma's a hop, skip, and a jump to me. At first, traveling to Texas every, twice a month was a lot. Um, but now it's kind of become the norm. We just hop on a plane and go see Dom. So it's become a new normal, traveling at least 2 or 3 times a month.
So during this past cycle, a lot of people got to learn, oh, Dom's got a younger brother too. So
Uh,
how's that process starting to work out? And talk about him a little bit.
Joshua's I honestly was okay with Joshua not playing football. He started younger than Dom. He started, I want to say, like at 5 or 6. Dom started a little later. Um, but he didn't like it. And I was fine with that. I was like, okay, well, we only have one athlete in the family. I'm fine with, less concussions and all of that. Um, I put Joshua on a team and he sat on the bench, like not on purpose. He would prefer to sit on the bench. So I was like, okay, maybe football's not his thing. So he quit. And maybe by the time Dom was in 10th grade, he was like, okay, Dom's getting all this attention. Um, he was always kind of Dom's little shadow. He really wasn't into a lot. I put him in. He played chess. I did basketball for a little bit, but we really had I'm like, I don't know what this kid wants to do. He used to tell me he wanted to be a YouTuber when he grew up. So it was like, okay, we got to let Joshua find his own niche. Then Cal came in the picture and we went on the official visit for Cal and they dressed Joshua up in the uniform and, took the pictures and all that.
Wow.
Yeah. And he got a taste. They put him on the field. It was just him and Dom at the Cal Berkeley Stadium. And the field
Yeah.
was empty. The bleachers were empty and they were just throwing a ball. And it was almost like a light came on in Joshua's head. Like you could actually see the light bulb, like, hey, I like this. And after that, it was over. Now it's like Joshua knows more football than Dom.
Oh,
Dom
wow.
never, yeah, Dom never studied the sport per se. Like he was just naturally good at it. Joshua goes home and studies it. He's watching, like, I forgot what it's called, like the hardest hits or something like that. One of those programs that the kids
Hard.
watch. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
something
The
like that.
what
But
is it, Hard Knocks?
something, no, it's just a
Okay,
bunch of
not Hard Knocks. Okay.
plays. No, not
Just
Hard Knocks,
big,
but
just big hits. Just big
it's a
hits.
yeah, it's a bunch of plays where it's just linemen just knocking each other down. So he
Oh,
studies that. He studies. So he's the football person in the house, believe it or not. Um, and so at first, it took a while because I was like, okay, we got Dom through this with limited amount of concussions and limited amount of injuries, and now I have to do this all over again and hope you don't get hurt too. So
yeah.
it's definitely,
Oh,
but by now though, I've wrapped my head. You're just a football mom, and you're just gonna have to deal with what comes with it. So
yeah. Um, all right, so we switch over to TCU. TCU had some really, interesting success, going to the playoffs and, being, again, winning a game in the playoffs. And so, um, describe, just the few years at TCU for Dom. Like, um, what was his mentality around that? Because I mean, like, you have the standard of success now, and you have that, that playoff experience. How was it last year for him? did he go into the year kind of thinking like, if I have another good year, maybe it's NFL, maybe it's transfer? What did that look like?
Honestly, I don't think I can't speak for him, but I will say I really don't think he transfer was in his initial plan. I told somebody he set the bar very high for himself. You don't just graduate at 17 and then go to the national championships, you know? So I feel like almost like he thought that that next season was going to be the same, you know, because that's just how his first experience was. So he dealt with a little bit of disappointment, of course. He was disappointed in himself. Um, but Dom's a relationship person, so his loyalty was what made him stay as long as he did. The conversation came up um, earlier in the year, and he was about to go ahead and try to transfer then the first time the portal opened. But his love for his coaches and his teammates, he really wanted to stay. So he stuck it out through spring ball. Um, and I guess I can't say exactly what was the final decision to make, you know, the final factor to make him go ahead and transfer, but I know they hired the new DC, and he was just like, you know, Mom, for a business, if this is what I'm going to do with my life, um, business decision would be the best thing to do is transfer. And I said, pray on it and see what see what your options are.
I love it.
But I'm glad he did it. I mean, there were some tears, there were sleepless nights, there were,
Definitely.
rough conversations with coaches, with friends. But at the end of the day, I told him, the people who say that they're in your corner, they're going to be in your corner, whether you go to junior college, whether you stay at their college, whether you quit
Yeah.
football altogether, they're still your people. And if they're not, if they leave you because of decisions that you make, then you know that they weren't really for you anyway. So it's been a lot of teachable moments in this, a lot of life
Yeah.
character building. Um, so that the transfer thing was a shock to me too. I was like, first you tell me you're moving out of California, you did that to me. Then I finally used to you going to Texas, and Texas is a second home at that point. I'm comfortable with it. I
Yeah.
know my way around Fort Worth. Now you're telling me we're going to a state neither one of us have never been in. So it's definitely kind of, I'm glad I'm kind of I'm a little can be mild mannered, so just kind of go with the
Yeah.
flow and let what's going to happen.
So the familiarity with Oklahoma was there already because I mean, obviously TCU, had a famous game that national championship year. Dylan
Yes.
Gabriel gets knocked out of the game, and they just, I mean, absolutely ran the team. Just, and it was just a bad situation for Oklahoma that kind of
Yeah.
followed them throughout the rest of the year. And
Yes.
then last year had the opportunity to play again, and so he gets to see that improvement. For you as a parent, like you've seen Oklahoma, what the brand difference between Cal and TCU and then Oklahoma. That I mean, those are significant leaps up. What did
Yes.
that mean to you to say like, oh my gosh, like the coaches are reaching out to him in the transfer portal from Oklahoma, like, and then the other, obviously the other teams were reputable programs too. So how
Yeah.
did you handle that?
I'm still, all they said to me was SEC, and all I could think of was these big homegrown giant kids that, it's a different type of competition. And they're like, if this is what he's going to do with his life, with the rest of his life, the competition has to increase. So I just had to realize, this is like, you put them in first grade, they graduate and go to second grade, they graduate and go to third grade. So essentially this is really what's happening. This is him graduating and going on to where he's supposed to be. So again, even though my nerves, it's definitely keeps me in prayer, but at the end
Yeah.
of the day, he's actually following the path that we set out for him to follow. And so that's really, when you raise your kids, that's the goal. You want them to follow directions and do what it is you laid out for them to do. So I cannot be upset with him. As bad as nervous as I get about it, at the end of the day, it's still what we prayed for him to be to accomplish.
to have that opportunity is obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only beautiful as a parent, but then I think that you had the right mindset with that because I mean, if he really is going to be an NFL player, like let's make that jump to the SEC because that's going to better prepare you. Correct?
Yeah. 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 And Dom had as a child, he had a little. I think he was 3 or 4. He had an injury that could have really taken him completely out. I mean, never played sports. So
Yeah,
just the fact that he's able to do this is a big deal for us. Um,
yeah,
and not a lot of people know about that injury. So when they see me, like, I'm watching him play football, you don't realize that this boy could have been paralyzed. So
oh yeah.
so yeah, so it's definitely a service. The whole situation is surreal.
So this journey, I mean, all in all, like this is a family journey, but this is definitely Dom's journey, and
Yes.
you can still have your opinions and stuff, and your affinity for Coach Venables and the program and the coaching staff became pretty evident pretty quickly. What, go to the first time. When was the first time that you actually got to have the conversation with the Oklahoma coaching staff?
Um, so Venables, how do I want to say this right. Um, just the first meeting with him, it felt like I had known him forever, and he wasn't a coach. Like, I don't know much about the different football coaches and where they came from and what other schools they've been at, so that didn't impress me. Hearing, oh, he was at Clemson, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Because I'm not a big football person, believe it or not. But his character, just meeting him, I was telling somebody else, like, we were here for the spring game. And he walked around, they put you on the little golf carts and they tour you around the school and all that. That was amazing. The school itself was amazing. TCU is a beautiful campus, but Oklahoma was just the campus was just beautiful.
Yeah,
Um, but it became towards the end of the day, and I guess there's a certain amount of time that their coaches are allowed to spend, and so he had a little bit more time that he could spend with us. He got out of his car and got into the back of the whatever car we were in. I think it was like an Escalade, or the big Suburban, but he got in the
yeah,
back seat, all the way in the back seat. Like, we're all I'm like, the man can sit in the front. He got all the way in the back seat and was just a regular human. Like, he was chopping it up with us like we were old friends. And I was like,
yeah,
this is the personable, like some of the other coaches, the other visits we had, they were just like CEO minded, like, hi, I'm going to come shake your hand. This man showed up at Dom's house with crumble cookies at 7 o'clock in the morning before he went to practice. I heard the doorbell ring and I'm like, Dom, are you expecting anybody? Like, we had only been here for a day. And it's him, he's loud with crumble cookies and good morning, guys. Walk through the house, pet the cat. Like, I'm like, this man is a real person, and that's what I
yeah,
liked about it. And then my father just recently passed away, and he something about him reminded me of my dad. And Dom said the same thing. He was like, he reminds me of Grandpa, huh? And I'm like, yes. So for me, again, prayed a lot that Dom would pick Oklahoma. Again, like you said, I couldn't make the decision for him,
yeah,
but it felt like home. And I was adopted, and one of my little catchphrases is, you don't have to be blood to be family. And that's
yeah.
what this felt like. It felt like we just knew them, like they were long lost uncles. And so it just felt right. But the fact that Oklahoma was our first visit, I knew, I'm like, oh God, these other schools are going to roll out the red carpet. And the first visit gets forgotten about as you go on these other visits. So I just kept saying, Dom, don't forget about Oklahoma. So, and they were
Is that
diligent. Like, they checked on Dom, they checked on Josh, they called me. Like, it was the presence. You could still feel. I'm like, okay. Some coaches were like, well, we'll let him take his other visits, da 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 da, and they left him completely alone. And to me, that was like, okay, well, they didn't really want him that bad if they didn't call and just check in.
yeah,
So, um, we were getting text messages and just real quick check-ins. And pictures, and it was just really nice. And I know they probably do that for everybody, but not everybody is as family oriented. Some people are in it strictly for the coaching. Um, there was another school that the coaching, you couldn't go wrong with either school. But OU had more, like I said, the family aspect. And so
Yeah,
I was like, okay, even if he picks that other school, coaching wise, business wise, it'll do him just as well as OU would. But you don't
yeah.
have Soul Mission, you don't have the Life After Football program, like all that is very important to me. So,
So you bring up Soul Mission, and some
uh,
people, when I've done these interviews, Soul Mission obviously is a big piece of what everybody says, and it's not a tactic and it's not a tool. That's like literally just a way of life, and that's how this coaching staff just in general operates. What were your first thoughts about the Soul Mission and hearing about that?
oh, I loved it. Like that to me, and I tell everybody, for me and my plan for Dom, the NFL has always been plan B, and he knows that. Um,
Yeah,
the degree and your character, because at the end of the day, if you get hurt,
that's
you may not ever be able to play football again, but who are you as a person? So the fact that Soul Mission, teaches them how to be men and teaches them how to give back, that to me was everything. Like some of the, and quiet as it's kept, well, not quiet, but I one of my fears is, these schools use the kids and they play football for 4 years or whatever, but then what do they do after that? Are you
yeah,
helping them find jobs? Are you making sure their mental health is okay where they can be? You
very
know,
much.
yeah. So Soul Mission just had all of that to me, and that was very important. In fact, speaking to that, Miss Zoo the other day was telling me, I was like, please remind Dom to get his passport. She said, oh, I'll put that on the list. But they literally walk through the parking lot to find the kids that have close to expiring tags to make sure that they get, I mean, stuff like that, like where another college
Yeah,
isn't going to do that. They could care less. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
little things like that those were the deal breakers for me.
So after the spring game, and
Mhm.
Jay and I, we saw you guys down on the field, and Jay's the guy that I do the podcast with, and
Uh-huh.
him and I mean, we both love the school. Not just, I mean, we started doing our podcast because I think that our affinity for Brent Venables and just
Uh-huh.
who he is as a person. But we saw you down there. You guys looked like you were having a blast. You just smile ear to
Uh-huh.
ear. And again, like you said, it was practice. It was number one. But as you were leaving, those rumors started circulating to where it's like, man, we saw the Williams family and they looked excited, but now they're off. And so you guys stuck around campus a little bit longer, and then the other campuses started. So I'm going to ask you this, and you can say, Eric, I want nothing to do with this one, but there's a famous video of you guys at a restaurant, and there
Uh-huh.
is sparklers on the cake, and from an Oklahoma fan, we're like, oh no, that's cringy, but that, like, as a parent, you're sitting there watching another school celebrate your son and just roll out absolutely everything for him. It
Uh-huh.
was how do those conversations go? It was like, all right, now let keep the core things, in your minds. Like that, the sparkler cake is awesome, but how did that look like? Just kind of trying to keep him, keeping the main thing the main thing.
You know what? I can honestly say that that doesn't, like, Dom doesn't get excited. So there's times where I'm
Hmm.
like, come on, you have to show that you're, give some emotion. So I wasn't really worried about other schools being able to woo him with stuff like that. Like, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was exciting. We took some great pictures. We got, cool
yeah,
memories. But that kind of stuff really doesn't excite him. He
yeah.
actually prefers to be less of attention. He likes less
The
attention.
focus.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah, so one thing I will say, like, one of the schools showed him this housing, and where another kid would be like, oh my God, this is amazing, I want to live here. He looked at me and he was like, Mom, this is more for somebody who wants to be the center of attention. So
yeah,
that's just his, so honestly, that, like you said, that cringy picture, like, I was really thinking in my head, my baby really wants to bury his head under the table right now with all the sparklers and stuff. Like, he was so embarrassed. I mean, like I
That's
said, it was fun, but
yeah.
that wasn't going to make or break. That wasn't going to make the decision. So,
So
and then
you
one thing
get
I
to,
do,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, one thing I did remind him, even though I knew it really wasn't a big deal to him, I told him, at the end of the day, this is what they do for a living. Like, they're going to do the same thing for another student that comes along and, they feel like can open up, can do things for their program. So,
Yeah.
you have sparklers tonight, but tomorrow 3 other kids are going to have sparklers. So you can't let that, you know, be a factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said, Brent jumps in the back of the car, and he's up in the morning bringing crumble cookies. He made a comment the other day in an interview where he says, like, my mom says if you're not going to go to Oklahoma, I'm still going to go to Oklahoma. Um, you know that that made a lot of Sooner fans like extremely extremely happy, just because we hear these things, we hear the recruiting battles, and you don't win every single one of them. And
Yeah.
it's relationships matter, but then so does NIL matters, and then so does development. So this year, you had this opportunity to, do something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
When you guys sat down and made the decision of choosing Oklahoma and going through all that stuff, how
Mm-hmm.
happy were you when he said Sooners?
Oh, I was so relieved. Happy isn't even the word. I was like, oh, okay. We got that battle taken care of. I knew. So, like I said, the other schools were great. They just
Yeah.
didn't have the full package. Um,
Hmm.
there were some schools that, okay, he has great coaching, but they're just going to look at him at like a number. There were other schools that had close to the full package, but they just didn't have Venables. So
Yeah.
it just, I was relieved, and I was like, okay, now let's just get out there, let's drive around, let's get comfortable and familiar, and move forward. And here we sit.
So I'm absolutely, I feel terrible, Coach Bates. I apologize if you are watching this. That's another man I mean, when I see him post something, I don't do a lot of notifications on my Twitter, but Coach Bates is one, because I feel like it makes my day better when he says something, because
Yes.
there's heart there and stuff. Like, give me your thoughts on Coach Bates.
Um, so at first, like, I was just kind of like, okay, he's there's some, he's a coach, but he was just so nice that I'm like, how are you a
Yeah.
good coach if you're not cussing at kids and yelling? You know what I mean? He was just so nice.
Yeah.
And that kind of was like, uh-oh, I know Dom needs somebody that's gonna yell at him, because he likes that. Um, but also not having a father figure, he does need somebody who's going to coach, but coach where Dom listens. So,
Yeah.
if you scream at somebody, they're just eventually they're going to shut off. So Bates kind of had the perfect balance. I have heard him
Yeah.
scream,
Yeah.
but he'll circle back and like, hey, do you understand why I said this? Or do you understand why, I may have been a little bit hard? um he's not just coaching him just to make him do what he says do because I say do it. He'll circle back and make sure you understood why I'm telling you
Yeah.
to do this. And that's important because I know Dom um was a little, could have been, for lack of better words, intimidated by the learning new plays and all that. And so
Hmm.
that's really what concerned me about Oklahoma. I was like, oh God, he's not going to pick Oklahoma just because of the playbook. And so I told him,
Yeah.
you have to trust that whatever coach you pick is somebody that's going to coach you and you're going to understand it. Don't be intimidated by the playbook. Just, pick the coach that's going to teach you the playbook.
Yeah.
Um, Bates had the balance.
Yeah.
And that's what Dom needs, because at the end of the day, like you said, he's a big teddy bear. He's not the vicious person you see on the field. So he does need somebody that knows how to communicate, that's not yelling and screaming all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I we talked a lot about the relationship, and you're admitted, you said, look, not a big football. I think that you're more of a football person than you realize you are.
I think so, but as far as like no, like I still look at my kids and I'm like, what just happened? Did Dom do that? And they're like, Mom, how did you miss that? And I'm like, because I don't know. I really don't know what's going on. So,
So I like to do the predictions at this
mhm.
point. We're at the end of the interview. We've heard these things. You hear some of the national stuff about Oklahoma, and it seems like a lot of people just they don't realize that. I mean, we just ran the Big 12 for 20 years, and now we're going into the SEC, bigger, badder. But you've got guys like Dom, you've got guys like DJ Terry, and you know what you've seen practices. What do you think the Sooner team looks like this year?
Honestly, they it looks like it could be a really good run. Like I'm excited, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. And one thing, and Dom, he flourishes in the underdog. So in that underdog
Yeah,
position, so he likes the fact that people are, oh, he's not going to do this, and you guys aren't going to be able to do that. Dom's one of those people. If you tell him you can't do it, he's going to do it just because
yeah.
you said you can't. So I'm excited.
He's gonna press through. So
Yeah.
um, let's go with this last question here. Is you've got a year set up. Dom has personal goals. What
Hmm.
we're playing teams that like you watch and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish we could play them more often. Which games have you more excited? What is there a game specifically that you're really really excited about this year?
Tennessee. I'm really excited about the
Tennessee.
Tennessee game, just because Nico and Dom are California kids, and we have
Yeah,
relationship with families and stuff. So it's that's going to be a fun game. It's going to be exciting. We have some people coming with us that'll probably have on an OU shirt and a Tennessee hat. So it's going to be fun.
there we go.
Yeah, looking
There you
forward to
go.
that. Yeah.
Are you planning on making all the games, or do you just have some selected ones picked out?
In a perfect world, I would be at all the games. I probably will sit Missouri out just because been there. I'm gonna
Yeah,
try to do most of the OU games, of course. I do want to go to will for sure be in Tennessee. Um, but at the end of the day, I still have to be an adult and go to work. So so
don't we all?
so yeah. So at the end of the day, I'll be at the ones I can make. I can't even put a finger on how many, but if I in a perfect world, I'd be at all of them.
Well, Miss Cicely, I appreciate you so much for hopping on. I know that we've been kind of managing our big boy big girl schedules together. It's taken a
Yes.
little while for us to get connected, but I look forward to seeing you at a couple of the games, and definitely if you're not making them, you can always shoot me a text and ask me also, hey, was that good? And I
Okay.
promise you, I like to watch the games pretty quiet, and so my family just leaves me, and
Oh,
because their daddy's
nice.
talking to the TV and they can't hear him, so I go pretty crazy. But thank you so much for hopping on today. I know that your life has been insane, and it's almost talk season is almost over, and we got football just
Yes.
what do we got 22 days away.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Well, thank you. And so everybody, if you're checking this out, and this has been a great series inside the Sooner family, getting the opportunity just to share some more of the heart about everything. So hop down in the comments, let Miss Cicely know what you thought about the interview and how excited you are to see Dom. Also like, subscribe, and share it, because I think this is one that a lot of parents want to see is the reality of what this is. So Cicely, thank you so much. And again, I appreciate you, and Boomer Sooner as always.
Thank you, and go Sooners.